When people ask me, what's so special about First Baptist on Fifth? I answer quickly. It's not our building, though lovely, or our worship, though meaningful, not our gatherings, though life-giving, or even our missions and ministries in the world, though impactful. The very best part of First on Fifth? Our people, hands down. In our confession of identity, we said this of our community. Here, you'll see retirees and families with rambunctious little ones, teenagers discovering their identities, middle-agers juggling all the demands of this season, young people navigating adulthood for the first time, and seniors rich in wisdom and encouragement. You can read our fiery op-eds in the paper, pass us moving about on the city streets, see us building ramps for the underserved, catch us finding beauty in our gardens and on hiking trails, and experience us taking delight in the world. At the core of our community, we are folks who love each other well. And at the core of our life together, we share in meaningful conversation about what it means to live and love in this world. That's what you'll hear and who you'll hear from in our new podcast series called Life Together. Each episode will be hosted by one of our ministers and will feature a conversation with one or two or even several of our beloved church members. They'll answer a handful of questions about their story, about objects or artifacts that represent their journey, about questions or doubts they wrestle with, and why they are a member, and finally, what gives them hope. As you listen to their wisdom and laughter, their audacious hope and abundant love, I trust you'll be as inspired and moved as I am on the regular. T.S. Eliot once asked, "What life have you if you have not life together?" Join us this season for Life Together. Hello, and welcome to the First Baptist on Fifth Life Together podcast. We're so glad that you're here. We've had a wonderful series of conversations with people here in our church that we have been allowed to share with you all as you tune in. And it is such a joy today to welcome our friends, Rayce and Ethan Willis. Let me tell you a little bit about them. Rayce is a social entrepreneur who works with faith leaders, helping them about their finances at this really interesting intersection of faith and finance. And Ethan is the director of finance at Reynolds American. So if you have any questions about money, apparently these are the two that you should talk to. These two are both graduates from Wake Forest, and that is where Rayce and I first met. We're both alumni at the Divinity School there at Wake Forest. We met at several, I don't even remember when exactly we met, but somehow through the Divinity School. And speaking of Wake Forest, I had such a pleasure of watching you lead as the final pastor at Wake Forest Baptist Church, where you helped the beautiful people of that wonderful congregation end with dignity and vision and hope. And that doesn't just happen. So kudos to you and your beautiful leadership. And so I'm really thrilled that the two of you created some space in your busy schedules to talk to us about your stories and answer these questions. Those of you who've been tuning in, you know that we have asked kind of the same series of questions for each person or couple or group that we've talked to. So those are the ones that we have on our docket today. So let me start with where we've started with everyone, which is tell us your story, particularly the people or places or seasons of your life that have most powerfully shaped, either for, hardship or challenge or for good, your understanding of God and yourself.
When I think about kind of where I get the sense of God from, I reflect back on my childhood when growing up, we would go to the same church as my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and really seeing that sense of community, the love of God, and all come together. I really knew that that's what I wanted for my future family, and to find a church on my own. And really, those are kind of the informative times that I always refer back to.
I love that. I love the thought of you and your family all piled in on the pew together.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Same place every Sunday.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Which is why you'll find us in the one pew every Sunday in the back of the church.
Always the back row. Yes.
And I think for me, in a lot of ways, it's very similar. So I grew up on an apple farm in Western North Carolina, and I think that childhood experience of growing up on that farm really shaped my understanding of not only God, but vocation and rest and waiting and some big theological concepts as well. And grew up in a very conservative Southern Baptist church, which early on in my life really taught me the importance of community. This was a church that really showed up for its people. And regardless of kind of what someone was going through, like the community would rally around that family or that person to provide help. At the same time, later on in my life, that became a point of contention, as it does with a lot of folks who are part of the LGBTQ community. But I still have really good fond memories of that childhood church and kind of the way it taught me to be a congregant and just kind of being a part of a community of faith. And as I went through divinity school and really started to explore kind of different theological viewpoints, at that point in my life, I was really determined to not be Baptist. And kind of the further along I went, I realized just how that childhood church also shaped my theological understandings of community and kind of institutionalized church in that ways. And obviously, I've made my way back to the Baptist faith in a new way. But I would say those were some of the key kind of components for me as well. Just kind of the place I grew up in, and then finding myself a part of a really vibrant community of faith as a child.
I love that. I resonate so well with the showing up at seminary and saying, I'm not going to be this anymore, and then finding our way back there. Thank you both so much for sharing that. I wonder, my next question for you is one that kind of roots us in place, right? We're humans, we move through this world, but there's a rootedness that accompanies us wherever we go. And so my next question is, if you had to choose one or two or three objects or artifacts that kind of are representative of your life's journey, what might they be?
You want me to go?
You go first.
So it's as I was thinking about this question, it's not necessarily like a physical artifact, but if you know me and you know us, you know dogs are a big part of our lives, right? Or fosters, we do a lot of work with rescue dogs, things like that. But our oldest dog, Dolly, has been with me now for a decade, right? And
Dolly named surely after
Dolly, and of course, yes.
Right, of course.
And as I think about the last 10 years of my life, 10 years ago, I was starting my seminary journey. I was in a really dark place around my identity and sexuality and faith and all of that colliding together, and kind of really trying to figure out who I am in this world and how I want to be in this world. And this dog comes into my life, and she's been with me that entire way, right? And so it's weird to kind of name this out loud, but in a lot of ways, like, this dog is what taught me to trust again. This dog is what taught me to, love again, and how to love abundantly and without conditions attached to it. And just a way to be in the world. As something as simple as her napping all day reminds me that it's okay to rest. It's time, it's okay for me to take a nap. I don't have to be productive all the time, things like that. So even though it's not a physical artifact, I will, be able to carry with me for the rest of my life's journey. This is something that has been ever present for the last 10 years that has really kind of shaped who I am and how I look at this world and how I hope to be in this world.
That's exactly right. I often think about our dog, Lou, and she does the same thing. She just lays around and naps. And it's like, well, look at her earning her keep. She just doesn't even, she just models so beautifully. As you said, the worth that is inherent in her, she doesn't have to earn. She doesn't have to, go running after it. She can just be who she is and bring so much love. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. What about you, Ethan?
Well, if I think of an artifact that kind of ties back to my faith journey, I actually have a CD of my grandmother playing the piano. And she was the piano player at our church growing up. And so before she passed away, we made a recording of all of our favorite hymns. And so anytime I get discouraged or upset, I listen to that often, actually. And that always kind of helps me bring back home and feel rooted and kind of get my guiding star again.
Oh, I love that. Were there favorite hymns that she regularly played that are on that CD?
Obviously, your normal Amazing Grace, How Great Thou Art. But there's one that I really love is Till a Storm Passes By that I always enjoy listening to.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. In our lives of faith, obviously, Rayce, as you just alluded to, we have those seasons of questioning and doubting and not feeling at home in this faith that has raised us in some ways. And so I wonder, what are those for you too? What are the questions or the doubts that you wrestle with the most in your life?
I think our friend Sarah Seinel said it best in her interview is the questioning of heaven and the afterlife. And really what part of the Bible is meant to be illustrative and what is supposed to be practical. I think really for me trying to understand what is just keeping hope alive for me in terms of, seeing my grandparents or my friends again and kind of piecing that together. Would probably be my number one question.
Yeah, sure. What about you, Rayce?
Yeah, I think for me, it is what's the role of church? And I think a lot of that comes from my experiences in institutionalized spaces. So as you mentioned, I was the last pastor at Wake Forest Baptist Church, which was a beautiful experience, a really hopeful experience that brought a lot of hope into kind of what I envisioned for the future. But also it was this church that was part of a larger system. And I saw the unique challenges and in some ways even the evils that church had to navigate because they were part of this larger system at play. And I just kind of, as I reflect over my kind of full theological journey, I found myself in other spaces that were part of a larger institutionalized church system where other evils were at play, but also really good things were coming out of that space as well. So it's always been a question for me, and this is how I'm really Baptist, but like how much institution do we actually need? Like, are we called to be the Church of Peter or the Church of Paul? And like, where is the actual right path forward in today's world?
Yes.
So really kind of reflecting how is the church supposed to show up for witness? And I think we all envision this kind of unified experience of like, oh, if the church could just unify and be that ever, kind of that ever present voice for justice, but also recognizing that I don't necessarily want to be unified with every church out there, right? So kind of where do you find that balance of kind of individuality, congregationalism versus cooperation and larger church structures that kind of bring these spaces together? Yes,
that's right. I can imagine your work has something to say about your questions and doubts about institutional church. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you have the sort of the nimble ability to kind of, I don't know, be a speedboat in an ocean liner world of church life. You can sort of zip in and zip out. So I appreciate you thinking about these things and writing and speaking about them. Okay, my next question for the two of you is how or why did you come to be a member here at First Baptist on Fifth? You two, let's see, you joined sometime last year. Can't remember exactly when. June. Okay.
July-ish, sometime. Our first Sunday was Easter Sunday of 2023.
That's right. I remember that. Yes. Right. So the second part of this question is, do you have a quintessential First Baptist on Fifth story that you would tell? And you may not have one just yet, or if perhaps there's a story from Wake Forest Baptist that feels like that spirit has carried over here, you can speak to that too.
Yeah. I'll start with the first question of why we picked First Baptist. And I think that kind of hearing our backstory, it makes a little bit more sense of we really wanted that more traditional setting in terms of the space, the hymns, and what we knew growing up. But we also wanted to make sure that what was taught was the theology that we believe God intended us to live by. So having that more progressive mindset and making sure that we love everyone like Jesus did. And so when we came here, it was just a natural fit that these two married together.
Yeah, I think the larger part of that story is as Wake Forest Baptist was closing down, one of the things that I did to try and help the congregants imagine where they might land next was starting to be in conversation with other pastors and churches in the area whose theology I thought was in alignment with theirs, and inviting them to come and either share a little bit about their congregation, or in the case of you, preach for us. And I'll say, as that church was winding down, I think we were pretty clear on, we felt First on Fifth was where we needed to, where we were going to end up being next. But I was also very intentional about creating boundaries with my congregants, and even told you, like, you're not going to see me until Easter Sunday, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
I was really like I'm going to be there, but I'm going to give you like these few months for my folks to just kind of show up and see if that's where they want to be. And I think for me, just on that Sunday we came, to see so many familial faces, folks who had come from Wake Forest Baptist be here, and still like together, but also integrated into the congregation. Most of us all sit on one side of the church. But
the Wake Forest Baptist section over
exactly.
there.
It's not just Wake Forest
That's
Baptist
right,
people.
that's
It's just,
right.
kind of where we found our empty pews on that
That's
first
right.
Sunday, and we haven't moved.
That's right.
But just how like normal it felt like when we arrived, right? Like I knew you, I knew I liked you, I knew I liked what you stood for, but that's also like the church and the pastor don't always align, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
I was a little worried. I was like, okay, like I know Emily, I know what she stands for, but let's see like how she shows up in the pulpit at First on Fifth.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I remember that first Sunday, I guess it was Easter Sunday, and you, in your Easter sermon, which pastors know, like Easter Sunday is when all the new people come, all the people that you're trying to get back in the pews come. It's usually the biggest offering Sunday, all the things. So typically sermons are a little bit more guarded on Easter Sunday. And I remember you just naming things that I was like really intentional, like I wanted to hear, like calling out Christian nationalism, like speaking about like gender and sexual equality, things like that. And I was like, okay, like if she is doing this on Easter Sunday, like this is a church that we kind of belong to, right? And the beauty of like how you integrated that into like the Easter message of resurrection and love was just phenomenal. So it was this, like, not only am I home, but like the work can continue, right? And for me, that just solidified it, right? So we've been very grateful to have this community ever since then.
That is so kind. Thank you for those words. And it's hard now for me to imagine our church without you two and all your wonderful congregants from Wake Forest Baptist. Like, I look out, I did this yesterday in worship. I looked out and, two of them had, Steve and Eve had done the flowers, and, Judy and she and Sam were sitting side by side, and they had something they were cooking up. I could just tell, and
They're always cooking.
they're
up something.
always, I know. And I just am so humbled and grateful by the presence of the wonderful people who have shepherded and stewarded that church for so long, to, take the risk of a new place and new people. And, that's really hard, really hard. Yeah. So your leadership, I'm going to give you lots and lots of kudos for that. Like,
thank you. And thank you for cultivating a space where that welcome was felt.
Yeah,
because that was
absolutely
also on your end.
Well, the gift is right here. My last question for the two of you is, what gives you hope? What gives you hope right now?
I would say everyone's enthusiasm for change.
Hmm.
No matter what side of the political aisle you're on,
Okay.
whatever your theology beliefs are, I think everyone in the world, I feel like, wants some kind of change. And I think it's a really good time for us to be, not us, but everyone, to be a part of that and making sure that we are influencing, loving, and guiding to build a world where we feel, where we want our children to grow up in.
I love that, Ethan. Thank you. What about you, Rayce?
Yeah, so kind of building on change in some ways. So kind of a lot of my circles are other faith-inspired social entrepreneurs who are reimagining ministry and kind of the role of faith leader in society quite amazingly. And I just look at kind of my community, and that's what gives me hope, right? So I see all these folks who are just doing really cool work, and they're navigating systems that historically have been very unjust, and they're forcing that system to align with their justice-centered mindset, and it's working, right? And I think that's just like what is really energizing for me right now is just this new generation of social entrepreneurs reimagining the role of work, reimagining the role of ministry outside of the institutionalized church, even though it often intersects like mine does. And just seeing them be successful is like really life-giving. And I think instilling a new way of being and a new way that we can approach capitalism and economics and all of that stuff. And it doesn't have to be an either or conversation. Like, you know, we can be people of faith called by God to do good, to do justice. We can make a profit, and we can help make this system more hospitable to everyone, right?
Yeah,
And
that's right.
A system that everyone can belong to. So I'm just really thriving off that right now. It's giving me a lot of hope.
I love that so much. And I love how what is giving you hope and what you just articulated, Rayce, directly connects to this hunger for change, that the hunger for change perhaps that you're seeing is both in the institutions that know that something needs to give and also in the leaders that are saying, no longer can we continue on as we've been. The two of you have modeled that and continue to live that way and draw the rest of us in. So thank you for being just who you are, for sharing this time today, for opening up a bit about your life and your story. And we're so grateful. So thank you both. Thank you to all of you who have tuned in for our Life Together podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple, YouTube, and on our website, firstonfifth.org. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks for tuning in.